This week, several media outlets and personalities have been responding to Alex Thompson's speech, where he called out the media for their failure to accurately cover the Biden administration. If you missed it, just this past weekend in Washington, D.C., the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner took on an unusual sober tone. No president, no comedian, and instead a stark admission of failure from within the press corps itself. Axios political correspondent Alex Thompson accepted the Aldo Beckman Award before an audience of 2,500 journalists, politicians, and media executives, and used his moment on stage to drop a truth bomb. We, myself included, missed covering President Biden's cognitive decline, Thompson said, calling it a cover-up by the people around him, and by extension, a cover-up by the press that trusted those same handlers.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
That line alone reshaped the narrative of the night. Instead of celebrating journalism's power, the event spotlighted its pitfalls. The dinner, devoid of Trump and stripped of its usual humor, became a forum for accountability, with Thompson reminding attendees that acknowledging errors builds trust, while being defensive erodes it.
I say this because acknowledging errors builds trust, and being defensive about them further erodes it.
Just days later, former CNN editor Chris Cillizza took to Substack to add another layer. His take was that reporters didn't hide Biden's decline. They simply absorbed the White House spin, repeatedly assuring us that his health was just fine and never followed the story where it went. Cillizza said he and many in the press brushed off Republican concerns because they took the White House at its word, rather than investigate firsthand evidence. His claim is that it wasn't a grand conspiracy, just a classic case of too much faith in official messaging.
I think it was an inherent and sort of unconscious bias more than a conscious bias, but I think the reporters covering this White House were too willing to take the Biden team's word for it. Anytime you asked about Joe Biden, they would say, well, I mean, he's 80, he moves a little bit more stiffly than he did before, but man, he is totally with it. He outworks our 20-something staffers. And I think reporters were too willing to just say, okay, that makes sense. They were too credulous. They didn't ask enough questions. Their skepticism meter was not turned up high enough. And I think that had it been a Republican in that office, particularly if that Republican had been Donald Trump, there would have been less credulity. There would have been less willingness to just go along with what the Trump White House was saying. Like, oh, he's fine. You don't see him in his great times. He's amazing. I think there would have been more hard questions asked. And I think there should have been more hard questions asked by the media of Joe Biden and Joe Biden's staff about his health.
Then you have MSNBC's Chuck Todd, who essentially had a meltdown over who he called right-wing virtue signalers, who are calling out the media for covering up Biden's mental decline, which to me seems like they are more upset at being held accountable. Todd went on to claim that the media was not covering up his mental decline and that the real blame should be put on top Democrats like Chuck Schumer. This is not a media failure. This is a failure of the Democratic Party, he says.
This is not a media failure. This is a failure of the Democratic Party. And I just sort of the virtue signaling that some people have done to try to say that the media missed this story. They didn't miss this story. So, David Ignatius wrote, I just refuse to accept this stupid premise because it's a manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. The media's got plenty of things to attack them for, and there are MSNBC and CNN and pundits that absolutely carried water for Joe Biden, but they're not journalists. They're former strategists that carried water for Joe Biden. The journalist, David Ignatius, wrote a very high-profile column in October of 23 saying, is he really running again? This doesn't seem like a good idea. People like me were promoting Dean Phillips's campaign because he was running
Wall Street Journal did a bunch of coverage.
Sense. So it's not like this. This isn't WMDs where the White House worked with the mainstream media to manufacture a story that did not exist. That was a press failure, massive press failure. This was not that failure. This is an attempt by some to virtue signal, and it's this horrible sort of pitting different news organizations against each other, when ultimately the people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, every elected member of Congress.
Now, the climax of all this is when the president appeared on ABC for an interview where he called the network out for their coverage of Biden as well.
Do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up, and I think we're a respected country again. We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across the stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst, I have to be honest with you.
Now, for context, Trump is suing several media outlets, particularly ABC News, which settled a defamation lawsuit last December. The network agreed to donate $15 million to his presidential library and issue a statement saying it regretted comments about Trump made by anchor George Stephanopoulos. Trump claimed in the lawsuit that Stephanopoulos defamed him by saying he had been found liable for rape. Meanwhile, 60 Minutes hit a credibility wall of its own. Executive producer Bill Owens resigned amid revelations that the program deceptively edited a pre-election interview with Vice President Harris to smooth over her verbal fumbles. It was so bad that CBS's parent company, Paramount, issued a rare public apology after internal documents showed producers reordered Harris's words and cut out pauses, essentially manufacturing a more coherent soundbite just weeks before the election.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Now 60 Minutes faces a lawsuit alleging the deceptive edit violated viewers' trust and reshaped political perception of the vice president's competency. A program once known for truth-seeking is now defending itself against charges of spin and manipulation. And to complete this amalgamation of media misfires, Donald Trump's recent display of illegal alien mugshots on the White House lawn sparked a full-blown meltdown on cable news. Going for full sensationalism, CNN blurred the faces, arguing they didn't want to terrorize viewers with grisly images, while MSNBC commentators slammed the entire exhibit as inhuman.
CNN's working to confirm the identities, and if there are actual allegations against these people, until then we are blurring their identities.
And now critics are saying it is this same repetitive behavior from the media that led to them facing lawsuits and being called out by their peers. The debate about who was responsible for distrust of the media has gotten so large that even celebrities have chimed in. The Office star Rainn Wilson pushed back on an MSNBC host after she claimed Elon Musk and Donald Trump were responsible for the public distrust of mainstream media. He pointed out that left-leaning media did kind of plug their ears and say, hey, everything is fine, while Americans were feeling the effects of a very different society that the media was portraying.
40% of Americans don't trust mainstream media. Why is that? How did we get here?
Listen, we are seeing a huge loss in trust of all of our institutions. It's the media, it's medicine, it's banking. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy and all of these pillars, they need to stand tall, they need to stand strong. And sort of losing that trust is not by accident, it's by design. President Trump won, and tons of people were shocked or angry or frustrated, and they're tuning out. And at the same time, you have the Elon Musk media machine, because they want you to leave traditional media and they want you to go to X, which is a bastion of misinformation, where there is no fact checking. So it's a perfect storm of people saying, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tuning out, I'm disconnecting. And then you have a force pushing it.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration, and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's I mean, look, the economy's great, la la la, immigration's not that much of a problem, and really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
So what do all these events have in common? Well, journalists trusted too much in Democrats, covered themselves in spin, edited the truth for convenience, and then censored reality when it didn't fit the preferred storyline. No wonder trust in the media has tanked to record lows. But none of this matters without your input as a consumer of news media. Comment below your thoughts. Do you agree with Alex Thompson's take or what Rain Johnson said? Or maybe you actually see what CNN's Chris Cillizza was trying to say. Let us know down below.